While we'd like to believe that companies are always looking out for consumers, the epidemic of disastrous recalls puts that into serious question. Whether it's moldy McFlurries or drug-laced children's toys, let's look at the worst product recalls that'll destroy your faith in humanity. In 2009, Toyota was caught in a fatal design scandal so bad it kicked off one of the biggest recalls in motor history. What was the problem? Not with the engine or the brakes, it was with the floor mats.
What?
Yeah, you heard that right. The whole mess started after a brutal crash in California, when the accelerator on a woman's Lexus ES350 sedan went out of control, leading to 4 fatalities. Following an investigation, safety inspectors found that the accelerator pedal was bonded to the mat, which was not the correct mat for the car. Because it wasn't the right shape, the mat had become unsecured and slipped forward, wedging itself into the gas pedal and causing the vehicle to speed out of control. On top of this, they also found that there was serious brake damage, indicating that slamming the brake pedal had failed to stop the car's acceleration. And that's a scary scene to imagine. It turns out that in many Toyota models, if the gas pedal was wedged all the way down, that braking was all but impossible. In response to the tragedy, Toyota began a mass recall of 3.8 million U.S. vehicles and 8.5 million worldwide, replacing the mats and installing a new brake override system to avoid any similar accidents. So that's the end of the story, right? Well, wrong. During the U.S. Congressional Committee's investigation into the recall, 5,000 internal Toyota memos were leaked. These revealed the company's cost-cutting strategies, including lobbying the government for softer regulation and purposefully delaying defective equipment recalls, all of which was under the cheerful heading, "Wins for Toyota Safety Group." Not exactly the best look after a massive disaster. While only the 2009 accident was confirmed to be directly caused by the brake fault, potentially 29 other fatalities since 2000 could have been caused by the same issue. So, while Toyota probably lost billions in sales, that hardly feels like a good enough punishment. To help with their health image, in 2016, McDonald's came up with the brilliant marketing move of gifting a nifty little wristband with every Happy Meal that would count your steps. Now kids had a fun gadget to help burn off those fries, right? Well, instead it just, burnt their arms. You see, these wristbands weren't exactly high quality, with the band's battery overheating quickly, causing first-degree burns after less than 10 minutes of use. And soon enough, parents were flooding social media with photos of their kids' arms scorched by the bands. After more than 70 incidents, McDonald's finally took action, recalling almost 30 million units nationwide. But don't worry, they wouldn't let people leave empty-handed. Parents could return their bands and get, a tub of yogurt or a bag of apple slices for free. Nothing like a couple of apples to soothe the wailing of a burned child. Between 2002 and 2015, millions of cars across 34 brands, including Ford and Mitsubishi, were equipped with faulty airbags to devastating effect. How? Well, this is the story of the worst manufacturing catastrophe in history. In 2012, the Japanese company Takata supplied 20% of all airbags in the world. But in 2013, their products were linked to a string of injuries and fatalities. Whereas other companies used safer gases like nitrogen or argon to blow up their airbags, Takata was using ammonium nitrate. This compound can quickly become unstable under hot conditions, causing the airbags to become highly explosive. Yeah, explosive. There are reports of people getting into minor fender benders or just stopping at red lights when their airbags suddenly exploded. And to make matters worse, the blast would be so powerful it would rupture the bag's metal casing, launching metal shards at drivers and passengers. Around 24 people lost their lives, and hundreds more were injured, especially in warmer places like Florida and Hawaii, where the chances of overheating were greater. Between 2014 and 2024, over 67 million airbags were replaced, making it the largest vehicle recall in U.S. history. Meanwhile, the recall and ensuing lawsuits bankrupted Takata in 2017, leading them to be bought by the smaller airbag company Key Safety Systems for $1.6 billion. Considering how badly Takata screwed up, you'd think they'd shave off another billion. Even today, over 1 in 10 faulty vehicles still haven't been fixed, meaning millions of cars still have those ticking time bombs. In other words, check yours. We all know the powers a radioactive spider can give you, but what about radioactive shrimp? Well, in 2025, some people almost found out. On July 21, 2025, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued an emergency recall for bags of frozen shrimp from BMS Foods, a primary seller at Walmart. It was found that during processing in Sumatra, Indonesia, they were contaminated with a radioactive isotope called cesium-137. Eating the shrimp could have damaged DNA in the person's body, increasing their chances of cancer. Damn. Walmart pulled all BMS-branded shrimp from wholesalers across 9 states, and luckily none ended up in any consumer's stomachs. But how did these sea critters get a radioactive dip anyway? After all, cesium-137 is a byproduct of nuclear reactions created in power plants and during bomb testing. Pretty far removed from shrimp farming. Well, the current theory is that a nearby smelting factory may have accidentally melted a piece of metal containing the isotope, sending it airborne and inadvertently crop dusting the area with the stuff. But don't panic, while it sounds terrifying, the radiation levels weren't nearly as scary as they seem. In fact, the shrimp had about 17 times less radiation than the FDA's usual threshold, closer to the radiation from a banana. Now sure, banana's radiation is naturally occurring due to its potassium, while the shrimp got theirs from a nuclear oopsie, but hey, what can you do? In May 2006, Hasbro dropped a new version of the iconic Easy Bake Oven, a supposedly safe mini oven for kids that used a heating element rather than the old version's light bulbs. But this cute little toy turned out to be a tiny death trap. Just months after hitting shelves, reports started pouring in about kids getting their hands caught in the oven's opening. Several children ended up in the hospital with 2nd and 3rd degree burns, and one 5-year-old was burned so badly that part of her finger had to be amputated. Safe to say, it wasn't a good look. After over 77 incidents, Hasbro issued a nationwide recall, but by then, around 1 million of the ovens were already out there. Even with their efforts, there were nearly 250 more incidents over the next 6 months. Only 10% of the ovens sold were returned, meaning these finger fryers continued terrorizing families for years. As late as 2014, 5-year-old Sophia Justice was playing with an Easy Bake Oven her mom got at a garage sale. And just like hundreds of other kids, she quickly got her hand stuck. After 3 panicked hours in the ER, they finally got it free, and she made it out with her fingers intact. But not everyone was so lucky. If you're worried you've unknowingly gifted this digit destroyer, check if it has the model number 65805 stamped into the plastic. If so, call Easy Bake for return instructions. Or if you're feeling dramatic, just smash it into pieces so no one ever gets hurt again. Your choice. We've covered a few car mishaps, but this one is definitely the creepiest. Back in 2011, Mazda recalled 65,000 Mazda 6s across the US. Why? Well, because spiders were taking over their engines. What? Well, it turns out that yellow sac spiders, a species native to the Americas, are drawn to the not-so-sweet scent of exhaust fumes and wound up infesting people's car engines. And while these little guys are mostly harmless on their own, they were creating big problems. Mazda was getting reports of the creepy crawlies getting into the fuel tank evaporation canisters and spinning webs inside, blocking vapor flow, which put pressure on the fuel tanks and ended up cracking some of them. This posed a serious fire risk, so before they had an incident on their hands, Mazda took action. All returned models were fitted with springs in the engine vents to prevent the spiders from crawling in while still allowing airflow. Yet some determined critters still managed to squeeze through. So in 2014, Mazda went in for round 2, 42,000 more cars were recalled, except this time they installed a software update to the whole car, making it able to detect blockages and prevent pressure buildup. Mazda won, Spiders nil. Vioxx was the hot new arthritis painkiller from Merck & Co. in 1998. While waiting on approval from the FDA, they launched a massive 8,000-person clinical trial to see just how it performed. Early results easily outdid competitors like naproxen, but in November 1999, the study group realized something huge. 79 Vioxx patients had heart attacks within the first few months of taking it, nearly double the number that were taking naproxen. But hey, maybe it was a fluke, so they kept going. Big mistake. A month later, the heart attack numbers were still spiking. Even then, the panel in charge of the study still didn't cancel it.
This is fine.
They simply wrapped up a month early and buried the heart attack data in their 2000 report to the New England Journal of Medicine. However, by 2004, the truth was undeniable. Multiple other studies had come out showing an obvious link between Vioxx and clots forming in people's blood vessels. By the time Merck finally pulled their supposed wonder drug, millions had already taken it, resulting in around 88,000 heart attacks and 38,000 deaths. Jeez. But it gets worse. Even after stopping the drug, patients' risk of having a stroke was higher for years afterward. Talk about evil. In the end, Vioxx took the lives of a shocking third of the people who'd taken it. Meanwhile, Merck was forced to pay a massive $4.85 billion to settle thousands of lawsuits against victims, making it one of the biggest drug settlements in history.
Someone cooked here.
Now, do you think it was enough? Let me know down in the comments. In 2010, Shrek Mania was in full swing. And what better way to celebrate everyone's favorite ogre than a McDonald's Shrek-themed glass with your meal? Now, little did people know, these glasses came with a deadly twist. Yep, another McDonald's mishap. It turns out that the glasses were painted with cadmium, a heavy metal used as a lead alternative after Congress cracked down on lead testing. But here's the kicker. Prolonged exposure to cadmium is way worse, boosting your chances of getting liver, kidney, and lung cancer. Yikes. While the cadmium levels were technically below the legal limit, it still raised alarms at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. But by the time McDonald's issued a global recall, millions of these glasses were already sat proudly inside people's homes. So if you spot one at your friend's place, maybe, accidentally knock it over. Sorry, Shrek. And talking of McDonald's, after they launched a new caramel-loaded McFlurry in September 2025, it was quickly removed from stores when customers in the UK started complaining that the hard caramel chunks were tough enough to break teeth. While McDonald's denied any actual harm, they abruptly pulled the treat due to quality issues. But McFlurry fans are no strangers to disappointment, especially when it comes to those notoriously unreliable ice cream machines.
Hey, Terry, smell my finger. Wow, what the hell is that?
So, what's the deal? Well, it turns out that every McDonald's ice cream machine is supplied by a business called the Taylor Company. And while they're designed to make soft serve, they also sport a self-cleaning function. Simply flip a switch, and in 4 hours, the machine should be ready to go, except it rarely is. Error messages stop the cleaning process with no explanation, and disgruntled workers have to start all over again and hope for the best. Okay, but who cares, right? Well, given what's lurking in those machines, I'm not too confident the cleaning process always works. In 2017, a McDonald's worker in Louisiana posted a photo of some seriously nasty, moldy goop pulled from the ice cream machine. It went viral, and understandably, people were freaked out about potential food contamination. McDonald's quickly clarified that the moldy tray is used to catch equipment leaks and never touches the ice cream, but knowing those two things are so close together is enough to make anyone's stomach do backflips. Few drugs have had as big of an impact on the mainstream society as Ozempic. But in 2023, it made the news for all the wrong reasons. The UK's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency discovered wholesalers had received counterfeit Ozempic mixed with the real deal. At some point, the fakes had been snuck inside authentic-looking packaging, but after opening them up, it was clear that they were just a cheap imitation. A recall was issued, and very luckily, none of the fakes were sold to the public. While knockoff brands usually do contain Ozempic, they also have other potentially harmful substances like insulin. Others might have unsterilized needles or any kind of horrible stuff floating around in them. Some people have been hospitalized after using counterfeit pens, suffering hypoglycemic shock, a life-threatening condition, or falling into comas. Sadly, dubious Ozempic pens are more common than you'd think. In 2023 alone, over 300 fake pens were seized. So how can you tell the difference? Well, first, check where the expiration date is printed. Fakes put it on the side, but the real pens have it on top. You should also watch out for exposed glass vials, peeling labels, or low-quality plastic. If you're planning to use it, make sure you're getting the real deal. Is anyone old enough to remember those ads for Aqua Dots as a kid? Basically, you'd make pictures by arranging small multicolored balls on a grid. Well, it turns out that thousands were taken off the shelves, and the reason is wild. In Australia and New Zealand, alarm bells went off when kids started getting hospitalized after gobbling these tiny beads. But the issue wasn't the beads themselves, it was the glue coated around them. You see, most Aqua Dots used a harmless compound called 1.5 pentanediol, but a faulty batch contained 1.4 butanediol, which is very different. 1.4 butanediol messes with the central nervous system, causing people, in this case, kids, to seem drunk or dazed. The compound is actually similar to party drugs like ecstasy. In other words, these kids were tripping. Luckily, no serious injuries were reported, but the scare was big enough to trigger recalls for millions of toys across the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. In a desperate attempt to save the brand, Aqua Dots was rebranded as Pixos in the US. I guess sending a bunch of kids on a crazy drug trip is considered bad press. Who doesn't love a hot cup of coffee to kickstart the day? Well, if you're using a Keurig Mini Plus brewing system, that cup might be your last. Back in December 2014, Keurig recalled over 6.5 million coffee makers in the US. Why? Well, it turns out they liked to overheat and spray boiling water at people. Yeah, definitely not the morning pick-me-up you'd want. After more than 90 burn reports, one which involved a kid getting burned across the collarbone, Keurig had no choice but to act and recall all machines carrying the defective K10 model number. But by then, it was already too late for some Keurig owners. Just 3 months later, one Oregon family learned about their coffee maker's overheating problem when it started a fire in their kitchen, torching their apartment and leaving them homeless. Sifting through the wreckage, investigators quickly linked the blaze to their K10. So how did Keurig handle it? Well, they didn't offer to cover the damages, but get this. They did offer to send them a new coffee maker because nothing says we're sorry like burning down another family home. Remember buckyballs? Well, in 2010, these tiny magnetic wonders were everywhere, but by 2013, they'd all but disappeared, all thanks to one horrifying design flaw. For those who missed the trend, buckyballs were powerfully magnetic ball bearings sold as toys for teens and adults. Created by two Brooklyn guys, these shiny balls could be connected into all kinds of shapes, and they were the coolest thing on desks nationwide, but there was a catch. Kids couldn't resist popping them into their mouths, and when they did, something terrifying starts to happen. See, each magnet was made from rare earth minerals, so they're way stronger than your average fridge magnets. Swallow 2 or more, and they'll snap together inside of you, potentially causing serious internal damage like, wait for it, pinching holes in your stomach. Ugh. This x-ray shows a toddler who swallowed a whopping 28 of these bad boys. Luckily, this time they managed to remove them all without issue, but still, I think I've discovered a new phobia. In response to these incidents, the Consumer Product Safety Commission didn't just issue a warning, they sued the toy makers.
The company had to stop sell and recall all of its products. And when we offered various ideas and suggestions that didn't involve a recall, the commission filed an administrative complaint and sued the company on July 25th, 2012.
Something they hadn't done to a business in over a decade. Desperate, Buckyballs creators took out a full-page ad in the Washington Post begging then-President Obama to step in. And spoiler alert, it didn't work. And they even tried to generate public support against the lawsuit with their Save Our Balls campaign, which also failed. Gee, I wonder why. After the lawsuit and terrible press, Maxfield and Oberton had no choice but to do a nationwide recall. Moral of the story: don't make toys that double as medieval torture devices. Tesla's Cybertruck has quickly become the cilantro of the motor world, but its reputation isn't helped by the serious manufacturing problems it's had over its short lifespan. In just 15 months of being released, over 8 different recalls were issued, with issues ranging from broken window wipers to the accelerator getting stuck while driving. Ooh, not good. But the recall in March 2025 was by far the largest. It turns out the truck's distinctive stainless steel paneling was detaching. It's not a good look when maybe the car's biggest selling point is literally peeling off. And while the error seems to have affected just 1% of all trucks sold, a mass recall was issued for 46,000 of the vehicles, which is about every single Cybertruck sold at that point. I suggest wrapping each car in industrial tape just to be safe. I mean, it's not like anyone will tell the difference. Imagine you're rubbing in some rejuvenating cream before bed, only for your face to suddenly break out in extreme pain. Well, that's near enough to what happened to swaths of people in the UK after Herborian Centella cream was recalled for containing something very dangerous. Produced in South Korea and shipped to Britain, it was found to have Candida parapsilosis, Micrococcus luteus, and Microbacterium oxidans bacteria. This chemistry set of bad stuff can cause anything from skin infections to arthritis and even sepsis, a potentially fatal condition where the body attacks itself. Yikes. But how did they get into the cream in the first place? Well, they're incredibly resilient against even the strongest disinfectants, meaning they often find their way onto supposedly sterile tools like scalpels and other medical supplies. So it's likely that somebody handling the manufacturing equipment is responsible. While the product was pulled from the shelves, an unknown amount of the cream is still hiding in people's homes as I speak. Talk about terrifying. In November 2008, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention detected an outbreak of Salmonella typhimurium, a relatively common but deadly foodborne pathogen. Now, little did they know that it would lead to one of the most appalling food scandals of the 21st century. Months later, the source of the outbreak was found to be contaminated peanuts from 2 factories owned by the Peanut Corporation of America. So the CDC took a sample of their Kind Nut creamy peanut butter and boom, instantly tested positive for salmonella. But the problem is much bigger than just some bad butter. Despite making up less than 2% of the U.S. peanut market, they supplied a wide range of products, including crackers, ice cream, and even pet biscuits, all of which could be contaminated. It kicked off one of the largest food recalls in history, including nearly 4,000 products across multiple states. But by then, the damage was done. A startling 160 people were hospitalized and 9 lost their lives. Man, it's tragic, but it's not like the owners knew their food was contaminated, right? Well, when investigators dug deeper, they discovered emails showing company owner Stuart Parnell not only knew about the infection, but covered it up. In many cases, products weren't tested at all, and when they were, if tests came back positive, they'd just keep running them until the fluky negative result. In one shocking email, Parnell was told shipping would be delayed to complete salmonella testing, and his response? I just send it anyway. I'd laugh if it wasn't so horrible. But with the cost of the recall and handling multiple lawsuits, Parnell's peanut business would file for bankruptcy in February 2009. But his problems were far from over. 6 years later, Parnell was charged with fraud, obstruction of justice, and selling adulterated food, earning him a whopping 28 years in prison where he still resides today. He's got a lot of time to think about the harm he's done. In the best of situations, a product is recalled before anyone is seriously harmed. This was not the case in 2000, when faulty tires sold by Bridgestone, formerly Firestone, caused around 200 deaths and 3,000 reported injuries. The tires had an abnormally high failure rate and were prone to tread separation and failure. It was found that more incidents occurred in hot weather, causing the tires to fail and make the vehicles roll uncontrollably. It didn't help that the Ford Explorer, the vehicle the tires were predominantly paired with, was more susceptible than usual to tipping over. Being particularly wary of safety issues being associated with their brand, Ford replaced all tires on susceptible vehicles at their own expense. Bridgestone, meanwhile, tried to cover up the cases by asserting that users had abused or underinflated the tires. Ford's decision to replace the tires effectively ended a partnership between the companies that had lasted for just over a century, and Bridgestone was forced to recall 6.5 million tires, costing them $440 million, in addition to $600 million in lawsuits. But it's fair to say that this was nothing compared to the lives lost. Playfully colored spill-proof cups for your toddler, what's not to love? Well, unless you don't mind a bit of mold with your child's applesauce. Tommy Tippy Sippy cups have had a pretty serious flaw. In May 2016, parents enchanted by the whimsical characters featured on the front-end ergonomic shaping of the sippy cups were about to learn of a flaw that was just, gross. It came to light that the interior of the sipping valve was prone to developing mold when kept moist, something that's hard to avoid as that point of the valve has to be the point where liquids pass through it. And when this was discovered, several angry and disgusted parents took to social media. The issue gained a lot of attention because the product being scrutinized was intended for very small children. Plus, there was a lot of immediate revulsion upon the photographic evidence because, hey, let's face it, this is icky. The product's company, Mayborn, announced the recall of over 3.1 million units after several consumers reported finding mold in the valve, and even worse, some parents reported their child getting sick because of it. When you purchase supplies for your newborn, you hope to do so in service of proper care and safety of your child. Unfortunately, this isn't always the case. In March 2010, both Infantino and Wendy Bellissimo were forced to recall around 1 million of their baby slings. This was in the wake of the Consumer Product Safety Commission warning that a child in the sling could suffocate if carried too close to the chest. At the time, the Consumer Product Safety Commission was investigating at least 14 deaths with the previous 20 years to see if the slings were accountable, with at least 3 infant deaths confirmed to be associated. It's chilling to think that an item that was so common for new parents could be so dangerous. In August of 2016, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 smartphone was the hot new electronic on the market. Literally. By October of the same year, Samsung had permanently discontinued the device. And the reason? Well, battery defects caused the phone to bend and generate extreme heat that had been known to cause fires and even small explosions. In one fiery example from a local of St. Petersburg, Florida, they were moving a desk while his phone was charging in his car. And by the time he got back outside, his Jeep was engulfed in flames. The culprit turned out to be his overheated phone, which had literally exploded. It didn't take long for the flaws in the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 to be found. The company blamed the manufacturers for sloppy workmanship to quickly push the device out onto the market. Well, this caused problematic results while the batteries were charging. However, even after recalling the Galaxy Note 7 the first time and switching the battery suppliers, the smartphone was found to be a liability still. After 2 unsuccessful recalls and reintroductions after the initial release, Samsung officially discontinued the ill-fated piece of technology. Yet, the Galaxy Note 7 still lives in infamy. It's not allowed on planes or in bus stations, not even if it's turned off. A series of incidents in 1982 made consumers think twice before taking extra-strength Tylenol for their headaches. 7 people in the Chicago area died after taking the pain reliever. So what was the culprit? Product tampering. The tablets responsible for the deaths were found to be laced with potassium cyanide. This had Cook County in an uproar, and authorities were on the hunt for the person or group who might have committed such an act. In a scene right out of a movie, Chicago police blared warnings as they drove down the streets. Johnson & Johnson spent millions on their recall, and the effects of the poisoning streak are still apparent in today's pharmacies. The FDA mandated new packaging so that such tampering would never take place again. The seal on your bottle of painkillers gives the assurance that you can dull that pulled muscle or migraine without any fear. However, the authorities were never able to determine who had tampered with the pain reliever in the first place. In 2007, parents were put on alert when it was revealed that toys manufactured in China potentially contained lead paint. They used lead-based paint because it was cheaper to purchase, easier to supply, and also lighter in color than other paints. This is particularly concerning as lead is known to have a sweet taste, and children have a penchant for putting toys in their mouths. It's well known that ingesting small amounts of lead can have seriously dangerous results. Symptoms of lead poisoning include delays in mental and physical development and serious health risks, such as hearing loss, seizures, and even death. Needless to say, several companies with factories in China were quick to recall their products. This included toys manufactured for Mattel, who took a reported financial hit of at least $30 million. This incident still haunts the memories of diligent parents and will make you think twice after seeing that Made in China tag. You never know what some unscrupulous industrialist will overlook in favor of an easy profit. In fact, Chinese manufacturers don't have a great track record when it comes to using lead safely. 2 years later, in 2009, hundreds of people in the surrounding area of a smelting factory in Changqing Township were poisoned after it polluted the local area. Chinese authorities noted that over 850 children from 7 villages had up to 10 times the safe level of lead in their blood. In one of the most expensive recalls in tech history, Dell recalled more than 4 million of their laptop computers. The reason? The batteries produced by Sony tended to overheat and caused a fire hazard. This 2006 recall was estimated to have cost both Dell and Sony a combined $400 million. This was one of the earliest and most notable instances of Sony products having such an explosive effect, but it wasn't the last. Shortly after this incident, they released the Bravia flat-paneled TV. 1.6 million of these were sold before a customer in Japan noticed a small fire coming out of the television, accompanied by smoke. Sony had to announce a recall based on the possibility of further fires or melting. Then in 2014, Sony had to recall laptops and computers yet again. This time, it was the Vaio PCs and laptops that were the culprit, after the battery packs were reported as having caught fire. Kind of makes you rethink putting your laptop on your lap while you work. It started with Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire sauce.
When it was announced that the popular condiment had been a little more sinister than it looked at first glance, nobody could have ever predicted the massive panic that would follow. UK retailers and brands took a financial hit in 2005 when the carcinogenic dye, Sudan 1, was found in more than 580 products. It's believed that contaminated chili powder was the source of the deceptive dye. Companies and manufacturers of food products scrambled, fearing that it might have passed their oversight. Affected companies included McDonald's, Heinz, Walker's, Birds Eye, and Coleman's. The total cost was immeasurable, but speculators estimate that it was in the ballpark of tens of millions of dollars. In a February 2005 article, The Telegraph called it the largest recall in history. And the greatest irony? Sudan 1, though carcinogenic and a health hazard, is not the most lethal of contaminants. Dr. Howard, a leading expert in fetal toxicology at Liverpool University in the UK, points out that other carcinogens in foods such as acrylamide is just as dangerous to our health, and it's found in foods high in starch, cooked or processed at high temperatures, such as chips, fries, and cereal. It may be the stuff of jokes and memes now, but the poor design of the Ford Pinto was no laughing matter. The positioning of the fuel tank right at the back caused concerns that a rear-end collision may result in an explosion, forcing the car company to recall over 1.5 million of these automobiles. This has led some critics to label the Ford Pinto as the worst car of all time. In the following years, Ford hasn't exactly been able to maintain a sterling reputation. The manufacturer had to recall over 20 million cars in 1981 due to faulty brakes, resulting in nearly 100 deaths, and subsequently announced a voluntary recall in 1996 for defective ignitions. It was found that the ignition switches could cause steering column fires even when the automobile wasn't running. Yikes. Imagine finding that in your parking space. One of the largest recalls in terms of the amount of product pulled and the amount of distrust it sowed was announced in 2008, when melamine was found in baby formula. Melamine is an organic compound that's known to be toxic in high enough doses, capable of causing damage to the kidney, bladder, and reproductive system. Ingestion of the melamine-tainted milk resulted in 50 infants developing kidney problems and 1 death. The culprit was China's largest manufacturer of infant formula, adding the chemical in order to inexpensively increase protein in the formula. In all, 700 tons of baby formula was recalled. This wasn't the only product to contain the harmful chemical, though. The proverbial canary in the coal mine was pets who were getting sick and dying because melamine was found in pet food first. Pet food companies were forced to pull their products, but who could have imagined that a corrupt producer of goods would do the same only to a human child? Well, apparently, legal authorities couldn't. As a result of this scandal, 2 men were sentenced to death for unscrupulous business practices. All in all, a heavy price was paid just to save a little money. Are there any more outrageous product recalls you think I missed? Let the people know down in the comments. But now we've reached the end of the video. Thanks for watching.